ahead.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I was going to say good morning, but it's good afternoon, isn't it? So I will share my screen in just a moment. And what I'm going to do is share some very general concepts about creating an effective peace-building message. For me, it was useful to take a step back and think about the big picture of how messaging can have an influence either in promoting violence or promoting peace. Because so often we're very busy, it's hard to even find time to make a post on Facebook sometimes. So this is just an opportunity for us to reflect together. And like Olivia said earlier, I want to acknowledge that you all are the experts on what is happening in your country and in your communities. So I want to ask a lot of questions so that we can have some discussion and think together. And I also wanted to ask, Imam Wazir, do you think that there is some need for translation? Would that be useful? Or
Need be, I will intervene anytime.
Okay, so you are available?
Yes.
If people, okay. So please interrupt me if you need interpretation, or Imam, if you would like to interpret something that I'm talking about. And when I ask a question, please feel welcome to respond in English or respond in your own preferred language. So we will try to practice social inclusion in that way. So I will share my screen. Oh, here we go. And all right. Everybody can see my screen, okay? It just says inclusive messaging for peace.
Yep.
Okay. So please also feel free to raise your hand to get our attention, or so that Imam also has time. The general outline of what we want to discuss, the overall questions are, who are we trying to reach? We can think about this together. How can some messages threaten peace? To be aware of that and how we can counter that. And how our messages, to think together about how our messages can help build peace. You are all already experts on this through your TV shows and other ways, but this is an opportunity at least for us to reflect together. So first, before we get into it, I wanted to invite you all to try out using the chat function in Zoom to just share a couple of words, 1 or 2 words, about what does communicating peace, what is that phrase, communicating peace, what does that mean to you? Just quickly, what are some words that come to mind? I just want us all to chat so that we all begin to participate in some way. Oops. And I am not sure if I can see the chat. Christina, can you see the chat?
Yes, I can see the chat. I don't see any words coming in yet, but if people want to just type a few words and I can read them out.
Okay, thank you, Christina.
I'll say, Laura, keep asking, and then just continue. If there is anything related to you, Christina will give us feedback. Get going.
And one person just said, Yoma just said that communicating peace means preventing conflict.
That's a good reflection. So when I asked someone this question recently, they also began talking about the importance of listening as another idea. When we use the chat, please feel welcome to use any language also. Maybe we will rely on our Imam Wazir to interpret as needed as well. And since we can all see the chat, I don't need to understand everything.
And Geta has just raised her hand.
Okay. Would you like to add something? Let's see.
I think she just has to unmute Mulugeta.
Okay. So we're still muted? Well, we will keep trying. Feel free to interrupt me. I will move on just so that we keep the time.
Right.
But feel free also to ask a question by using the chat.
Okay,
So
what does this question mean? Who are you trying to reach?
Yes.
I can't see it properly. What does those words mean? Positive, and I can't see it properly. Could you just read it out?
Yes, I will read it. I will go through this slide. Sorry, I went to my slide too fast. So this is a model that I wanted to share about thinking about who we want to reach, and it relates to social inclusion, because we can imagine that the people in our communities have a variety of opinions. Some may be very supportive of our goals, and others may actively oppose us or be trying to create divisions for any reason. But most people are going to be somewhere in between. Most people are going to be in what we might call a movable middle. People who might not have an opinion or might only be passive supporters or opponents. So those people can be reached and influenced by the actions or messages from people on either side of the spectrum. So we know that we are not very likely to change the point of view of people who are very opposed to our goals, but we may be able to reach people in the middle in order to make them more open to peace building and to kind of inoculate or vaccinate them against messages that could threaten the peace. So I'll explain this model a little more. So if we look at this on the left, you have, maybe it's us. We can be the leading activists for peace because we are all here today. And we are trying to influence as many people as we can who do not necessarily agree with us yet. And so let's think about how to reach some of the people who actively support us. I'm highlighting our active supporters. How can they be more involved through our communications, through our outreach? How can we reach our passive supporters so they become active and more involved in our resilience committees or anything we're trying to do? How can we reach people who are not involved so they are more sympathetic with our goals of building peace and social inclusion? And how can we lead some people who may not agree with us to begin to question their point of view? You know, because from the other side, there will always be forces that are seeking to push against our message. So this is why social inclusion in our messaging and having an inclusive message for many that has many different religions, many different ethnic groups, many different ages in mind is so important, because there are so many people who could be reached and influenced either in favor of our goals or who could be mobilized by people who are seeking to be more divisive or work against the peace. So I don't like to use the word enemy. I'm using opponents because we do not have an enemy. First and foremost, we are all human beings, but there will always be people who disagree with us. So do we have any questions right now?
Okay, maybe I can shed a light on this point.
Yes.
It's not a question. I could say that in order to reach the people, we don't have to reach in the first of all those supporters, active supporters, because they are supporters already.
Yeah.
And you have to start from active opponent, because if you have an opponent, you could share your idea. Maybe he will accept, maybe he may not accept. Passive opponent may come to the second time. And the third time, I have to speak with uninvolved people, because they know nothing about my activity, whether I'm talking about peace, stability, tranquility, or I am just supporting a party or some people or some group. So they have to know what I'm engaged in. Then later on, we may understand and we come into one term. And active supporters and passive supporters have already know who am I and what am I doing and what is my doctrine. My point of view is that we have to start from the active opponent, not the passive opponent. Active opponent, they may share your idea, they may oppose you, they may take it, they may know who you are, then maybe they can go along with the wagon, or they may say either you support or leave. That's my idea.
No, that is an important, I think it is important to keep in mind that people can change their mind, right? That we do not, and one point that I want to make is sometimes people, at least in my own community, spend a lot of time arguing with the active opponents, when we could be doing more to reach out to people who would be more likely to support us and who can then become advocates for us as well and join with us. So, and that in reaching other advocates, other leaders, we want to make sure that we're reaching across different groups to build as much support as possible. That's. Oops.
Laura, I've two more bits of input in the chat.
Oh, okay, great. Please share. I can't see it.
Sure, I'll just read them out. So Fami Mume says that in response to what does creating peace mean? Fami Mume writes, it means awareness creation about peace to the community. And then someone else, I'm not sure who it is, it just says it's from a Galaxy phone, said that you must reach active supporters. So just echoing what you just talked about.
Yes, not to neglect the people who agree with us. Yes, to make sure that we keep people engaged and involved. These are all important questions to keep in mind when we think about, there's not one right answer, because at different times we may have different goals and different people who we need to reach. These are just questions for us to keep in mind as we create strategies. So I moved the slide to focus a little bit about how messages can also be used to mobilize people to commit violence. And one term that people sometimes use is dangerous speech. So an organization called the Dangerous Speech Project has done research into what kind of language can contribute to mass violence. And this is different from hate speech, so it's not a question of censorship. It's more about looking for warning signs of violence and responding with nonviolent methods. So I'm gonna share, I have this is a kind of a funny cartoon that I found from the Dangerous Speech Project. So it's important to remember that for dangerous speech to be dangerous, it needs to be said by somebody with influence towards somebody who is vulnerable. So, so in this case, we have the blue group is being told by its blue cartoon leader some messages against these red group. And the two main problems to watch out for in dangerous speech is when people are dehumanizing the other group, talking about somebody else as less than human, maybe a monster, maybe as an infection or as rats or insects. This often happens as a way to justify violence. So it's something to really watch out for. Or another way that speech can be dangerous is when you have a leader who is presenting another group as the whole group as a threat to the main group, often as a threat to women or girls specifically. Sometimes if people feel like women or girls are threatened, it becomes easier to mobilize them towards violence to protect women. So that can be dangerous. Some examples of dangerous speech are very obvious, and I think we have all seen it in our communities in various ways because it exists in all countries. It can exist in any culture, any religion. But I have a few examples that are less obvious that I wanted to share to kind of get us to think about it a little deeply. This one is from, I think it is from Myanmar or Sri Lanka, which is a country where most people are Buddhist, and Buddhist monks have a lot of influence. This is a protest by Buddhist monks against Muslim influence. So that would be an example of dangerous speech because this monk is holding a sign that says, the world is not only for Muslims, suggesting that the Muslim minority could be trying to take over. So that could be very dangerous. It could help to incite violence against the minority group. Another example, this is a cartoon about refugees coming from Syria. And the refugees are shown as a large wave of water that could overwhelm these representatives of other countries. And even though water does not seem very dangerous, it's not as bad as calling somebody a monster or a rapist or whatever else you could label somebody. I still think it is a problem because people are not being represented and seen as human beings. They are being seen as a problem that is a threat. So that I thought that was a potential example of dangerous speech. Another example comes from the president of my country, Donald Trump. He often uses dangerous speech that has been studied by the Dangerous Speech Project, unfortunately. And this is an example of something he said during his election campaign, since dangerous speech can become used more often during elections also to mobilize people. He said, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing those problems. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They are rapists. So with his speech here, he was suggesting that people from Mexico coming to the United States could be a threat to American women. And that can be dangerous because it could be mobilizing people to protect against Mexicans and commit violence. And unfortunately, that has happened here. So those are a few examples. So I want to ask the group a question. So I can stop talking for a little bit. How is dangerous speech affecting people in your community? What are you seeing in your cities in Ethiopia? Is this a problem? How is it affecting people? Please feel free to speak up or to comment in the chat if you're more comfortable. Either way.
You go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. That's a good idea, which happens always in this world. And for us in Ethiopia, the thing that always moves the people and makes them very angry, speeches like religious and sometimes things like race or tribal or racism. And people always immediately wake up and just say no to it. And it happens and makes a lot of violences. And as you say, so the president of America, when he said when George Floyd were killed, he said something very bad. And all the people, Americans, regardless of color, religion, wake up and make a lot of protests in New York and in different parts. Same principle applies with Ethiopia, but mostly our community, when it comes to religion or tribal or racism, they can't resist it. They always get to the streets and say something and think is very bad, always happens. And it affects us too much. And I can't say such and such, but it makes us a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
We also have Hussein was raising his hand.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's not a question, just it is a comment. For example, in our city, dangerous the speech affected our people in different ways. For example, if someone say for example, there is in Somali community, there is a different clans. Then if one leader say this clan is not a good, it's deteriorated, maybe it can affect a lot of people to make demonstrations, to say a lot of different things. But in the community, the only thing is that the dangerous speech can affect is if someone talks about different clans. For example, if someone say this clan is lower than the other clans, they may affect the other clans, and there may be different demonstrations, different conflicts, and problems it may create.
Glad to hear from you.
Yes.
Yeah. So also I would like to add for for example, if the different clans, they may have different landowners. If someone or clan said this land belongs to other clan, the other clans they may say this is for us. So it may affect conflicts between different clans. So this is what my comments.
Great, thank you. Yeah, very important points. Did anybody else have any comments or questions, or is there anything more in the chat? No? Okay. Well, maybe we can, now that we've talked a little bit about what can go wrong with messaging and how leaders can influence people to mobilize towards violence or greater divisiveness, maybe we can talk a little bit more about what we can do to help prevent the spread of dangerous speech, and use our messaging to help build peace and create inclusion in our communities. So that's our next topic, is what can we do? What can peace builders do? I would point out the most obvious thing that we can do is to not engage in dangerous speech ourselves. I am tempted, sometimes everybody is tempted to treat someone as an enemy at some point. But what we can do, first of all, is to think very carefully before we decide to pass on any story, any rumor. Take a moment to stop and to think about, this is a tool that I borrowed from another organization, before sharing, to stop first, to reflect on what its impact could be on people. How could a piece of news or something that could be inflammatory, how will it impact people from different groups? How will it impact people emotionally? And if we think that we should share something, if it's important information to share, to take a moment to verify it, make sure that it's not fake news. Do a Google search, check an official website, see if it's true. And the most important question that we can really ask ourselves is, does this story spread anger or fear? If any time any piece of news or any rumor seems to be wanting to make us feel angry or afraid, it's important to ask ourselves, why am I receiving this information? Where did this come from? Who could this hurt, before passing that information on? I think that we all know this already, but I find it useful to remind myself. So we can do more than just not say dangerous speech. Our messages really can move people toward peace. If we're able to create a unifying message, it can build resilience so that more people are not susceptible to dangerous speech, so that they are resistant, they have resilience. It's not as effective the more we use inclusive messaging and help to build those connections. So I wanted to share some examples just to inspire us from different efforts that peace builders have done around the world. And there are so many examples, more than I could ever share here, of people doing excellent work in their communities around the world. But this example is from Myanmar. When ethnic and religious minorities were coming under attack, some students started a campaign online, a social media campaign called My Friend, the hashtag My Friend, where they took pictures with friends from different ethnic and religious groups and shared their stories of friendship to help rehumanize people and include others, so that they are creating a new message of inclusion, an umbrella that can go over everybody, that might have more popularity online, more popularity than some of the messages of divisiveness, which will always be there. Another example I wanted to share is for how people are rehumanizing each other using communications, is from Israel and Palestine, where the dehumanization of Palestinian people really helps to excuse the actions of human rights abuse of them. And it's very difficult to build connections between Israelis and Palestinians because there is so much assumption. Nobody knows that there are people working for peace on the other side, but there are. So some activists, some peace activists, both Palestinian and Israeli peace activists, have started holding a joint memorial ceremony where together they mourn the loved ones that they have lost in the conflict. And that shared sorrow becomes something human that they have in common. This is an example I shared. I'm not going to play these clips for the time. I can always send you the resource later, but by sharing personal stories, people help reconnect, even if they're separated by a wall, even if they could never meet someone from another group. Hearing someone else who has lost a child or a family member to the violence the same way they have, it creates a human connection that builds resilience. And in this example here, we have two mothers who have lost children in the conflict saying, our tears are the same. So that's another example. And yet another example I wanted to share is how social media can amplify small acts of solidarity in our communities, small, simple acts of outreach that can be symbolic and become much bigger if we share them on social media. In this example, again from Myanmar, there was a time recently, last year, when some people spreading hate speech were preventing Muslim people from making their Ramadan prayers at their mosques. So peace activists and interfaith activists came out to support their Muslim brothers and sisters by giving out white roses for peace. So you see all these pictures of people from different faiths, different ethnic groups, giving out white roses in public to show that this very symbolic action, that they support their Muslim brothers and sisters and their right to pray, their right to live in peace. So this became a national news story and an international news story. It's one example of how a small, simple act can spread when it's amplified by social media. And that may have helped to prevent some further violence or hate speech. It may have helped, even though it seems like a small, silly thing, but it can have a bigger impact. Another example, this is again from Myanmar, is to respond directly to hate speech with kindness. They had this idea that instead of hate speech, let's use flower speech. Let's watch what we say so that hate does not spread. So when they would see hateful messages, they might respond saying, hey, don't be at the source of a fire. Or they had different cartoons and in their own language. That was one example I wanted to share. So before I open this back up to our discussion, I just wanted to remind us again that for every group we reach, there may be different ways to best spread our message, that different groups of people, different ages, different genders, or different social groups can be reached best in different ways. And you all know how to best reach people. There is no one answer. For some people, it might be a Telegram channel or using a WhatsApp group to broadcast a broader message. Sometimes people use it that way. It might be Facebook and Twitter, or maybe nobody you know uses Twitter. I don't know. It could be the television shows. Those seem to be very effective in your communities. Radio shows, podcasts also, newspaper articles, or even public signs, public art, and outreach activities if it's safe. I know we are in a pandemic. There is also a threat of violence, so safety is a very real concern. But the more we combine and repeat our outreach across these platforms, the more our message is reinforced. So the more, we don't have to be afraid of repeating the same content in new ways. It's okay to share the TV show on social media and encourage people to join our social media when we are on TV, get people involved many different ways. So I hope that I have not been missing any questions.
No, yeah.
Okay. I just want to end by opening this back up to discussion, to have a little brainstorming from all of you of your ideas of what messages or stories do you think might work? What do you think could help promote peace or inclusion in your city or community? That is the question I don't know the answer to, but that you would know the answer to. So, so please.
Also, everybody, if the time needed,
Yes.
possible, we might push it a little bit, like 11, 15 after. Kind of stretch with the time. I don't know if there's somebody else's schedule after 11. There's no 10:35 our time. Christine, do you have scheduled anything after 11?
I don't believe so. It's not on our calendar.
Okay, I just want to check in, so I want to make sure we don't lose any valuable presentation of Laura. So
No.
Laura is asking,
This is my last slide. I will end with discussion.
that's fine. Laura is asking a very good question, and we are waiting for your answer either in the chat room or raise your hand. So we give you the floor, the cyber floor. Well, I think the message is well taken. Let them digest it. When they take the slide, if they have any feedback, friend Yilma, or directly they can give the feedback. So
we have one hand raised.
okay.
I cannot see the name in my.
Is it me?
Mulugeta, actually. It was Mulugeta's hand was raised, but that may have been from
the beginning, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it me?
No.
Maybe if you have something to say, it can be you.
Of course. Maybe I can talk about, the spread of rumors. Rumors have always, they just travel as a wildfire. And in our country, they always believe in rumors. And when there is a clash or a dispute, people always make rumors, which are completely baseless. But going back to our religion, to the Quran, it says, if somebody who is not ill will brings you a bad news, you have to confirm it, verify it before you try it. But our people, they don't use this verse. Immediately, if we put very bad things or rumors, they immediately believe it and spread it very quickly. The thing that we need is to stop the rumors is the first and foremost medicine or remedy for rumors. And on the other part, Facebook plays a big role in media, social media. I mean, that plays a big role in spreading rumors. You see, when there is a small dispute between two clans, one of them may start to post dead bodies from genocide in Rwanda and said, this clan, our clan, was killed like this. And the whole people will blow up like a bomb in anger and say, we have to revenge, we have to take a revenge, we have to pay it back. And immediately things will get worse. Therefore, instead of like Neymar, you say so that they posted white roses, but here they always post it cadaver from the genocide of Rwanda and make the people start killing each other and making it worse and worse and worse. Never gets better. And the thing, in my point of view, and according to religion, we have always verified what rumors are. Baseless rumors always make the people very bad and think worse, from the ban to the fire. Therefore, we have to always post it and use the media, social media in a good way, instead of using very bad way that makes the people start it and making it. And the thing that you pointed out, if we are peacemakers, we don't have to always say and follow what the people are saying. We don't have to be those who hear always the echo. We just have to say, just sit and wait things may get better sooner or later. Thank you very much.
One thing that I will add is I also have some resources that I can share with the group after our webinar that are that I found, and maybe other people have found more, but some fact-checking resources. There is a journalist in Addis with AFP who is a fact-checking journalist, and I will share his Twitter account and the WhatsApp number that he gives after. Maybe I could share it with the group after this call is over, so that if you see rumors, you can report it, and you can also use that to fact check. But also, some of these fact checkers, there's the AFP fact check, and also an organization called Africa Check. They can help broadcast, this is false, do not follow this rumor, if they know about it. So that may be a helpful resource also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will share that later.
Thank you. Any closing message, Laura?
Not for me. I know we do not have a lot of time, but I hope this is just the beginning of more of a conversation. I know that we could do a lot of much deeper thinking about this. So
Appreciate it so much. It is well presented. The time is efficiently used. Now, with this transition of quick classical music, I'm going to do my presentation. Stay tuned and be ready in 1 minute, okay?
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.